Good evening. This is the Mystic Kitten. My name is Michelle, and come get ready with me. So, I've already done my foundation and my concealer and my powder, and the reason I did that is because my children are having what they like to call a sleepover, and that's where the two youngest sleep over in one of their bedrooms, and they're being really loud. So, I thought I would do that first while they kind of calm down a little bit, which seems to have worked. And I'm going to say, I played with the Huda one more time, so I didn't get a chance to take it back last weekend like I had planned. My day kind of went, exploded. And so I couldn't take it back. So it's been sitting on my altar all week, and I've been staring at it thinking, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And I'm a firm believer of a second chance. So, second chances. We'll do a video about second chances one day. So I gave it a second chance. And you know what? I actually don't mind it. Now, I'm going to say I was feeling rather lazy and decided not to go all the way upstairs to get a sponge. I used my fingers and it blended way nicer. It's not nearly as cakey. I did have to do 2 applications to get the coverage I wanted, but it's pretty good and it doesn't seem to be I don't know. I found the first time it really caked and fell into it was gross. I didn't like it. Now, what I did do differently this time was I put on my primer, then I put on my concealer, then I did my green setting powder, then I put the Huda on top, the foundation on top of it, and then I used my unique Touch Behold setting powder on top of that. And it seems to be a really good combo. Now, I'm not sure if it's gonna stay a nice combo. Let's see if it stays put. But I do like the application on my hands, with my fingers, way better. You know, coffee at 9 o'clock at night. Whatever. Who needs sleep, really? So I was thinking, I got a few things on the go right now, so why not add something else, right? Duh, that's what I do up in here. So I'm gonna add something else. I was talking, and it was actually my mother's idea. It's because of my mother that I am going to even do this. So I was talking to my mom, and I was asking her about her placements, and she was like, I don't know what my placements are. And I'm like, what? Because to me, that's craziness. And she's like, no, I don't really know. And I was like, oh. I'm like, so when you watch your tarot card readings and you read your horoscopes and stuff, you're only reading, she's a Virgo. You're only reading Virgo. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, Mom, no. And she's like, what do you mean, no? So, I did some explaining and some scolding and was like, how do you not realize this? Like, you raised me and you don't realize this. I'm confused. But anyways, she didn't know. And so I helped her and I explained to her, and I'm in the middle of doing her birth chart up for her right now. And I realized that she could not be the only one who, I happen to have paper towels right here today, which is fabulous. Because the lizard just got changed. And so my daughter left them there so I don't have to pause and jump up and go get one of my knitted. So what I do, totally off topic, but whatever, it's about makeup, so we're going with it. I knit little tiny squares out of cotton, and that's what I use for my brushes, right? Because I find the knit really gets in there and they wash up lovely, and then if you need to use them as a face cloth, you've got plenty of them. And I find they work really, really well, which is normally when I jump up and I go get something for my brushes, that is what I'm going to get. But the paper towel's right there, so I'm gonna pull some of the color out of my brushes while I talk to you about my mom and her chart and what led me to come to this come get ready with me conversation, and then which will lead into the other half, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So I was explaining to my mother about like why it's important to know what your different placements are. And my mom was like, well, how come more people, like, this isn't something that's talked about in like other videos and stuff? Like, I haven't really heard too much. I mean, she was like, don't get me wrong, everybody always says check your other placements, but she's like, I never thought that it really mattered. Like, whatever, if it doesn't resonate with me, maybe next month will, and trundle off she'd go. And so I explained to her, I was like, well, it really depends on like what kind of reading you're watching or receiving. So when it's a one-on-one reading, I'm specifically pulling your energy. I am only dialed into your energy. It has taken me many, many years to be able to be like, okay, self, you're not pulling everybody's. You're not pulling, you know, the person sitting in front of you and their spouse and their children and their mother and, you know, their karmic relationship from 7 past lives ago. You are only pulling that one specific person. And I've been able to dial it in to the point where now I can do that. But it's like I said to her, with a general read, we can't do that. Like, we can't just dial in and be like, this is specifically for Leos, because there's cross watchers and there's Leo who are risings and moons and Venuses and Jupiters, and like, so you can't really dial it in that fine tune, right? Which is why we always say it's a general read, will not resonate with anyone. My favorite line that I've picked up in the last little while, that kind of is a catchphrase now, because I have a few people in my personals who are like, can you just say it? Which I think is hilarious. Would toss it, turn it, flip it, flop it, take it any way you want it, but if it doesn't resonate, I'll catch you in another video. And that's why we say stuff like that, is because the reality is there's no way that it can resonate with everyone, especially, you know, if you're watching something that, you know, we pull the cards and the cards are clearly depicting that, let's say it's a finance, and you're watching it because it's your rising and you're not looking into what sign rules your finances, it's probably not going to resonate with you. And if it does, it's not going to resonate with you very strongly. And this is what I was trying to explain to her. And so finally, I showed her, and she was like, oh my God, I wish more people knew. And I offer zodiac chart breakdown in my list of things that I do. And so I told her I would pull her one together. I mean, I've got a ton of reads that I have to get out because of the flash sale, which, by the way, tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., it's done. So if you wanted to take advantage of that, now's the time, because we've only got, I think, 14 slots left. So you'll want to take advantage. Like, if you want one of those, now's the time to book that. Send that email in, because it's important that everybody who wanted one gets one. It's important to me. So if you wanted it, go get on her. Like, pause it and do that now. Yeah. So anyways, so I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down, and I'm going to put out a series, because, you know, a Fix Me series and the 4 series of tarot card readings I do and the Come Get Ready With Me and everything else is clearly not enough. That my mom has now inspired another series to come out, and I don't know how often I'm going to be doing them, but I will go through like each placement and what they mean and like why it's important to know, and I'll make sure that I link somewhere where you can look it up yourself. It's very easy to look it up. It's just when I do it, I explain what, like, if you're Virgo and Venus, which is what I am, I explain kind of what that translates for you. So you get the placements, but then you get kind of a breakdown as well. So it's an added bonus when you have a reader or somebody who deals in astrology give you that information. But there are all kinds of things online that you can, I'm sorry, this is driving me absolutely nuts. There are a bunch of sites online where you can go and look that information up for yourself. It's just, like I said, there's an added bonus when you get somebody who works somebody who works astrology. They'll give you a breakdown that perhaps you wouldn't already, like, gives you a different aspect to it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that's something that I'm hoping to get. I'm going to start working towards making that happen sooner rather than later. What else is something else that I've got going on? So we can talk about this. This is also something that I'm going to get videos out on eventually. This is going to take me a little bit longer because I want to do more of my own first before I start trying to explain what it's all about, if that makes sense. I like to be very proficient at something before I start trying to preach the gospel, so to speak. So I have, over the last few months, been working with shadow work. And it's funny. Shadow work is a really funny little rabbit hole to go down. Here, I feel like you guys can't actually see me very well. So how about I do this? Maybe that will be better. Shadow work is one of those things where first of all, you really have to be ready to do the shadow work. And you have to be ready for all of the bullshit that it's going to pull up. So it's going to bring up emotions and feelings that you were sure you had dealt with. And you didn't. I mean, you locked them away real good and you put them somewhere where you didn't have to really deal with it, but you never dealt with it. We never deal with all of it anyways. We want to. Our intention is to, but the reality is as humans, it's far easier to just put it in a little compartment and stash that bitch away and pretend like it doesn't exist anymore. And the reality is not only does it exist, but as you put it in that little compartment, the storage unit continues to get bigger. And what I mean by that is every time you put a piece in that compartment, the place in which you're keeping all of those little containers has to get bigger. And that's your shadow self, okay? So your shadow self, I don't actually think I've ever heard it explained this way. And so you're welcome. Because it's kind of a weird way to explain it, but I feel like this is going to resonate with a couple people, so I'm going to go with it. So your shadow is a storage unit. And I don't know about everywhere else, but in Calgary, there's this service that you can use where they drop off bins. You pack your house up, and then they put all those bins that you packed up in a pod, and then put the pod in a warehouse. And then when you're ready, they pull the pod down, they empty all the bins out of the pod and drop the bins off at the new house. So the pod is your shadow self, and you put this shit in containers. And so every time you add a new container and you're filling that pod, eventually you need a bigger pod. So the shadow side of you gets bigger. So now the question is, how do we collect our shadow? Well, let me tell you, that's a fun little story. So, our shadow self is the things that we believe are undesirable. They're aspects of ourself that we have either been showed are undesirable by being bullied about it or being shunned or mocked or judged, or it's things we used to get in trouble for as like for kids. So I will begrudgingly put myself out there. So as I have stated in these come get readies with me many, many times, and I've always chalked it up to being a Leo until I really started doing this shadow work. So if you were to go to my daughter and say, my eldest, and say, Morgan, explain your mother's emotions to me, she would laugh, and then she'd say, they're dead. Stone face and completely serious. Because unfortunately, the reality is, for a lot of things, they are. And that comes from a few places. I mean, it started in my childhood, not to like poo-poo my parents. I've said it before on my channel many, many times. I'm not the type of person to say, it was my parents' fault. They fucked me up. I'm not ever going to do that. I'm just not ever going to do that. Because the reality is, not only did they do the best they could with the tools that they were given, you know, with the way that they were raised and everything else, but, you know, different generations, different times. Like, shadow work isn't something that they would have done as kids. So, like, kids, I say kids like I'm a kid. I'm not a kid anymore, I suppose, but I feel like one. But it's not something that they would have dug into. So how, I'm not gonna get mad at my parents because, okay, so my father's catchphrase when I was growing up, this is the phrase that fucked me up emotionally. Crying doesn't solve anything. That was my father's favorite thing to say when I was crying. When something went wrong and I would cry, my father's go-to to make the crying and the leaking of the face stop was to look at his 3-year-old child, girl, and say, what the fuck are you crying for? Crying doesn't solve anything. He's right. Crying doesn't solve anything. It took me until I was probably 9 to really see that and really embrace it, right? Because as a 9-year, you know, as a 5-year-old, I didn't get it. As a 4-year-old, I didn't get it. As a 3-year-old, I certainly didn't get it. And even at 9, I was only just starting to understand why crying didn't solve anything, because it made me feel better. So my little kid self felt like it did. But every time I would feel sad or hurt or something would happen that would make my little world crumble, and I would cry, I'd get told, stop being so ridiculous. Crying doesn't fucking solve anything. And so I learned at a very, very young age that crying was not the appropriate response. So I felt shame when I would cry. I'd feel weak. I would feel as though I should feel shameful that I had strong enough emotions about something that I would cry. And so I stopped. because I was a daddy's girl, and which was fucking stupid. That's a story for another day, but it was stupid. I see that now. I actually loathe that term, which is funny because I actually use that term in regards to my middle daughter, which I won't after this video. I will never do that again. Wanting your father to love you isn't a defining factor of who you are. It doesn't define your character. It's not a flaw. And I've always, as an adult, looked at being a daddy's girl as one of my flaws. Because it made me blind to certain things that, as an adult, I wish I had have realized much earlier in my childhood. But whatever, it is what it is, right? There's not a lot we can fucking do about it. You can't change the past. All you can do is learn from it. And so that's what I continue to try to do even today. But what I can say, and what I will say, is what made it difficult for me to realize and accept that my very first traumatic bin, let's say, was about not being able to cry. Because it was wrong. Because it didn't fix anything. Because it made me a pussy. Because I should woman up and just fix it. And crying doesn't fix anything. So as a kid, I stopped crying. For the most part. I mean, we all cry, let's be honest. But it also, see, the problem with childhood trauma is it doesn't just affect what the intended... So my father's intent behind telling me, don't be so fucking stupid, stop crying and go fix it, was to get me to stop crying and bothering him and go away. That was his intent. Because he didn't want to deal with my bullshit. The trickle down, trickle up, I guess, because we age, has been astronomical. So not only did it, wow, I don't want to cry. Not only did it cause me to shut down emotionally and to look at emotions as a bad thing, and to see myself as less than if I feel things, I don't know how to mourn properly. I've lost my best friend in junior high. I've lost my Nana, my Papa. I lost my Aunt Pat. I lost my dog. I've lost a few people in my life. Not a ton. I've been really fortunate. I haven't lost a ton of people. But I've lost a few people to death, not just because, you know, we've parted ways, but like actual, the final, in this lifetime, not to meet as these humans again. I don't know how to mourn them. I've never known how to mourn. I break down. I snap. Then I get mad. I don't deal with sad. I don't allow myself to be sad. I get mad. Because it was okay to be mad. I never got in trouble for being mad. I got in trouble for crying and being sad. But mad was acceptable in my house because my parents fought all the time. So they were mad all the fucking time. So if they were mad all the time, then it was clearly okay for me to be mad, right? Again, I'm not blaming them. We do the best we can with what we have. I'm glad I acknowledge it now. I'm glad that I am making steps to learn how to not hide that. But it is what it is. It's part of this fucked upness that is the amazing me. And I'm okay with that. I'm not in any way regretful or angry or my parents sucked, because they didn't. That's not at all it. I would never say that that was it, because my parents, they loved me and they did the very best for me that they could. And that's truly all we can expect from our parents. It really is. As a parent my own self, it's, all I can promise my children is that I will do the very best that I can by them with the tools that I have. That's all we can do. And that's all they can expect of us, because the reality is, one day, they're going to have children, if they're blessed with them, or they make that choice, and they'll fuck their kids up one day in some way. We don't mean to. But nobody's perfect. To be flawed is to be human. And so, I really hope that more people stop putting blame on their parents and really just fix yourself. Don't blame anybody. Don't acknowledge that something happened. Hug that inner child and say, you know what? That sucked. That sucked. And I'm sorry you had to deal with that. But that time is over now. And it's okay to let it go. You don't have... See, because the shadow side is a very good thing. Everybody thinks that the shadow side and shadow work and all this other stuff is scary or it's bad or whatever. And it's not. It is so not bad. Because here's the thing about the shadow. Your shadow was literally designed to do nothing but protect you. Its sole purpose is to protect you. Protect you from shame, protect you from fear, protect you from bullying, protect you from judgment, protect you. That's its sole purpose. That's the only reason it exists. If we lived in a world where there was never anybody who was going to judge you, there was never anybody who was going to make fun of you or bully you or any of these other things, which, I mean, let's get real, that's never going to fucking happen. Your shadow would have no reason to exist and it would fade away. It is solely there to take care of you. So how can we be mad at that? Or how can we say that that's a bad thing? It's not a bad thing. But it's something we have to learn to accept about ourselves. And then they call it, you have to migrate it, right? Or integrate it. You have to become one with your shadow. Because the light and the shadow side of you is what makes you. So that's what I'm working on. And it's tough. It's tough. I don't want to use this stuff tonight. I don't feel like it. I'm just going to give me a nice thick line. I feel like being a little bit dramatic tonight. Because, why the fuck not? So, yeah. So, I feel like when I first started my shadow work, that I was I think that I was a little bit, I had a misconception of what it was going to be like. And then I dug in and I was like, oh fuck. Why am I doing this? This was a bad idea. I changed my mind. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And then I dug even deeper and I really didn't want to do it because it was very uncomfortable. It was very, very uncomfortable. Because believe me when I tell you, when I realized what that very first trauma was, I wasn't like, it's okay. It's so great that my first trauma, my first traumatic experience was my father basically saying, you're a fucking pussy because you have feelings. That didn't feel great, guys. And I wasn't real accepting of it at first either. I don't mind to tell you. And I had to accept it. I had to. Because what am I going to do? Be like, no, Dad, we can't talk anymore because when I was a kid, you did something that caused my shadow to grow and it hurts my soul. And it fucked me up. He would laugh at me. He would laugh at me. And I understand that. He doesn't believe in all of this stuff. And that's fine. I don't expect him to, quite frankly. But, so I had to do that thing. I had to do that thing that I really fucking hate doing. You ready? I had to accept an apology that I was never going to get. He was never going to say he was sorry because I was never going to tell him about it. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Michelle, you are literally putting this out where you already have 111 views or subscribers. And saying, you're never going to tell him so that he'll never apologize. And I can still say that because he doesn't watch my channel. Because he doesn't believe in this stuff. And that's fine. He doesn't have to. I'm okay with that. I've been okay with that since I was a kid. Like I said, I started reading tarot cards when I was 14 years old. And I didn't even really tell him I did it then. It's not like I hid it. But I wasn't like, hey, Dad, let me read your cards. Because I knew at a very young age, like 14. No. Probably by 5, I knew. Getting acceptance from my father wasn't something that was ever going to happen. I knew at a very young age that his preference would have been to have a boy. And the fact that I was a girl was very disappointing. And the fact that I am a girly girl was even more disappointing, let me tell you. Which is why I was a tomboy as a kid, because I just wanted my dad to accept me. I just wanted my dad to love me. I just wanted my dad to want his daughter around all the time, like I wanted to hang out with him. And that never happened. And that's okay. It really is okay. It wasn't then. It really hurt me then. But I've definitely moved past it. I don't allow it to bother me anymore. But just because I don't allow it to like bother me at my core, that doesn't mean it didn't fuck me up. It also doesn't mean that a woman, or a girl, I guess, who grows up with her father in her house can't grow up to have some pretty severe daddy issues. See, because everybody thinks that daddy issues are built when your father abandons you, which they are. But it can also pretty seriously fuck you up when your father lives in the same house as you and can hardly spare the time of day for you. That's not such a great feeling either. And so I have issues trusting men. And I had a superiority complex when it came to men for a long time. And I just made some very not great decisions in the man category. I liked men I knew I couldn't have. I liked because it fed that shadow, right? And that's okay, right? We do these kinds of works and we find these things out about ourselves so that we can be better and so that we can, you know, be better. And I'm getting there. But shit still hurts, right? Like, that's the other thing about shadow work that really sucks is you do these really painful things and you go through, you pull this skeleton out and you rattle its bones. And you accept it as part of who you are. But that doesn't make it go away. All it really does is make you aware of why you feel that way. All it really does is make you acutely aware of what exactly brought you to this exact moment and why you made the choices you made along the way. That's all it does. It doesn't change it. It doesn't magically make that pain stop. When I accepted the fact that this was the reason I was incapable of mourning, that pain of losing those people didn't just go away. It didn't. It didn't just go away. What it did was it made me understand and acknowledge why I couldn't say goodbye and let go of, you know, that pain and that hurt that I just bottle up and put away. It just made me understand why I do that. So now I have to try to figure out a way to mourn. I mean, it really doesn't help that I didn't get to say goodbye to my papa. I wasn't given the opportunity to go to the spreading of his ashes or anything, which I'll never forgive. But again, I have to accept an apology I'll never get. Because some people in your life will never really fucking care about anybody but themselves. And their pain and what they're feeling and why they're feeling it. That's all that's ever going to matter to them. And I'm blessed to have people like that in my life. Yay, lucky me. And so because I am blessed with having those people, that type of human in my life, I have to accept it. I really don't have any other option. And so I had to there, that's better. I had to accept I never get to say goodbye to him. He is the man who inspired me to want to ride a motorcycle. I actually wanted to go into the army because of him. He was terrible to my mother. He was terrible to my grandmother. But he was always wonderful to me. And I'll never get to say goodbye. Because somebody thought that it wasn't important to have the little girl in Alberta who I had no say that we moved out here. I didn't want to move out here. I wanted to stay in Ontario, where my family was. I didn't have that choice. Nobody looked at me and said, "Hey, Shell, you want to move out to Alberta?" Because I would have said, "Fuck no, I don't. I want to stay here on the farm with my friends and my family." I didn't get that choice. I got told, "We're moving. You get to take like 6 things. Pick them." All right. And I went back and I seen my Nana as often as my parents could afford to send me, which, albeit, was almost every single summer. I was very fortunate that my Nana paid sometimes as well, but I was very fortunate that, my parents were always able to get me out to Ontario so I could spend the time with my Nana and my Papa. But I didn't get to say goodbye to either of them while they were alive. And my grandfather brought my Nana's ashes out to Alberta, and she was spread in Alberta. So I got to say goodbye to my Nana, but I never got to say goodbye to my Papa. And That's something I can't forgive. I accept the apology. And I don't hold hatred towards the people involved. But I can never truly forgive them for ripping the opportunity of a goodbye away from me without even giving me the opportunity. Nobody even said, if you can get out here in the next 6 weeks, we'll wait till you come. Or, when would you be able to get out here so that we can do it as a family? I wasn't even told. I was actually told after the fact that it was done. I was never even told that it was going to happen. Nothing. So, it hurts and it's painful. But I never cried. Because crying doesn't fix anything. Right? So we come full circle. But yeah, shadow work is, I love it. Now, I know that through this whole conversation, it doesn't seem like I love it, but I actually love shadow work. The reason I love it is because it gives you the opportunity to really look inside yourself and find those little pieces of yourself that you don't understand and pull them apart. And at some point, everything kind of clicks. At some point, you're given the option, right? Do you take the yellow pill and go small and really dig deep? Or do you take the blue pill and get big and never grow from what you could have possibly found, right? So when you take the pill and you grow small and you go down the rabbit hole, you emerge so much bigger than you would have been had you have taken the grow big pill and gotten big. Because you're growing from the inside out. It's not an illusion. You're truly becoming more of who you were meant to be at birth, rather than who we learn to be and grow into. And it's a great thing. And I'm really enjoying the process. I think it's a lot of, not fun. It's not fun. But I think that it's so amazing to see aspects of myself that I thought were undesirable, and I can now appreciate them. The one part of myself that I feel like I've always thought was very negative, I'm very passive aggressive. Anybody in my life will tell you I'm very, very passive aggressive. And so for a long time, I worked very hard to not be, and to not allow myself to embrace that side of myself, because it was bad. It was rude. It was inappropriate. It was mean. It was this. It was that. But it was never okay for me to be that part of myself. And now I accept it. I don't just accept, I indulge it. Because it's part of me. It's part of the way my brain works. It's part of the way, it's a defense mechanism. It's there to protect me. It's there. It's part of me. And it's okay when I'm in a situation and my passive aggressive side steps up and goes, hey, I have an idea. Instead of going, fuck off, you're rude and I can't even listen to you, you're bad. I go, oh yeah? What you got? And then I take the empathetic side of me and I go, okay, what you got? And I take the mad side of me and the sad side of me. And I sit down at a table and I kind of party with all of them. And then I come up with a very well-rounded way to approach a situation. And yeah, there's sides of it that are passive aggressive. And yes, there are sides of it that are so kind. And there are sides of it where it's nasty because I have a forked tongue and I can be a bitch. That's okay. Because all of those things are there to protect me and to serve me. And I was always meant to use all those parts, not just one or two of them that are desirable to everyone. Because my goal isn't to be desirable to everyone. My goal is to be authentically me. And that's what I'm going to do from now on. So, I hope you enjoyed this Come Get Ready with me. I hope I gave you a little bit of insight onto my journey with shadow work. And I can't wait to give you guys more tips. And I'm going to come up with, I'm probably going to do like a 10 video series on it eventually, but I just really want to make sure that I've got my facts straight and some really good reference points for you guys before I come back and be like, okay, this is how you do it. Because I couldn't find anything that really gave me a good, this is how you do it. So I had to like kind of fumble my way through. And I don't want you guys to have to do that. So when I bring videos forward about this, they're going to be informative and they're going to help you and they're going to give you a step-by-step. And they will give you examples and how I pulled through the other side on some of these things that really hurt and really sucked. But in order for me to be able to give you that advice and be able to hold your hand through that in these videos, I have to have done it myself. So that is the process I'm in right now, and it sucks and it's great and it's wonderful and it's exciting and it's all these really cool things, but at the same time, it takes time. All right, guys, I'm going to finish up those videos, so I'm going to let you go now, and I'm going to do that. So until we meet again, with love and light, blessed be. Good night.